We got to do better than 1%.
Right, we have to do we have to do really well.
Comprehensive plan.
You know, the Census Bureau will work on hiring people to go door to door, but even to encourage folks that may want to do that. You know, I'm not sure
We just
exactly
missed a
what the
mass
pay
mailing
is.
last week.
Yeah.
Everybody got their little envelopes.
There you go. But
That's all I talked about all weekend with people. So anyways, okay. Anything else?
One other item, when we get to the formal board action, agenda item number C, which is approval of the resolution authorizing the issuance of temporary notes, I'd like to move that to the top because we do have some people who are waiting on that are in a different time zone than us as well. So if we could just move that up, I'd appreciate that.
Okay. Those commissioners had a chance to look at the consent agenda. Any questions, concerns on any items on the consent agenda? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Voting.
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, then we'll move up the results of the sale of the general obligation temporary notes.
Yesterday afternoon, we had the process of the bids on the temporary notes that the board had previously approved. Mr. Arterberry is here to kind of go over the results and answer any questions.
Good morning. Thank you.
Morning.
Pleasure to be here. Yeah, as Mark mentioned, the county received bids yesterday for its Series 2019-1 General Obligation Temporary Notes. And bids were received up until 1 o'clock yesterday. And I'm pleased to report that the county got a total of 5 bids, which on a temporary note issue like this is a very good response. I think I was telling Mark in advance of the bid deadline I would have been happy with 3 or 4 bids. So I was really pleased to see 5. The firms that submitted bids were Bank of New York Mellon, TD Securities, Piper Jaffray, Oppenheimer, and Jeffries and Company. The firm that submitted the bid with the lowest interest cost to the county was Bank of New York Mellon, and their true interest cost on their bid was 1.258273%. To be exact. And all of the other bids were actually really close to that. The next closest bid was 1.261%, and the high bid was still a very low 1.31%. So we were, again, real pleased to see the response, and those rates are probably about a quarter of a percentage point lower or so than I would have expected if you had asked me a few weeks ago. So good response. Now, when the bids came in, the best bid, the way we allow the bidders to structure their bid, they're bidding an interest rate on the notes as well as a purchase price for the notes. And the best bid by BNY actually was willing to purchase the notes with a premium of a little over $200,000. And what we decided to do, rather than to have the county simply accept that bid premium, the most efficient thing to do would be to actually take that premium and use that to reduce the borrowing amount. So instead of issuing $9 million of notes, the actual principal amount of the note issue was downsized to $8,770,000. But when you add the premium on top of that, the county will still, in net, get $9 million to pay for the project costs. So again, really pleased with the results. I have to say, Mark and David and Janet were really helpful in not only preparing for the sale and preparing for the rating, but helping to evaluate the bids and make a decision about downsizing the issue. So a real good response, and obviously welcome any questions that you might have. The action item in front of you is to adopt the temporary note resolution that officially authorizes the issuance of the notes. If you have any particular questions about that, I'd defer to Gina Rekoff with Gilmore and Bell, who's here in the audience too.
Commissioners have any questions?
I just want to have you bring up what I was very pleased to hear about our bond rating for the county, if you can kind of give.
Oh, sure,
just the-
sure. We went through the process of getting the county's rating reviewed and, by Standard & Poor's, and they came out, and because these temporary notes are short-term obligations, what they do is they assign a short-term rating to these notes, and the rating that they applied to these notes was, it's called the S&P 1+ rating, and it's the highest rating that is given to short-term municipal obligations, which is very good. What S&P also did was they actually reviewed at the same time the county's long-term bond rating, and they affirmed the AA- rating that you had. And they had some nice comments about the county and the potential, maybe in the future, for an upgrade. Some of the things they mentioned is that they really liked your fund balances, so please keep that in mind going forward for budgeting purposes, is that they really look at those fund balances and like those at the level they were at. They also like your economy, the proximity to the metropolitan area, as well as the growth that you've experienced, particularly in your tax base over the last few years. As far as, the potential for an upgrade in the future, what they mentioned was they'd like to see you continue to maintain your fund balances. They'd like to see continued growth in the economy, as well as they mentioned, and I don't know how big of a role this plays in your rating, they like to see formalized policies regarding certain financial things like fund balance. You do have a formalized fund balance, but they also like to see a formalized debt policy and then a formalized investment policy. Quite frankly, those aren't things that many counties in the state have, but over the next year or so, it might be something that you consider looking at and adopting, maybe prior to actually, when bonds might be, the next issuance of bonds might occur. If you could get a couple of those policies in place, that might help your rating in the future.
I thought we had a policy in place that we would not bond over $40 million on the sales tax.
That's not a formal policy. It was a question on the ballot for the sales tax specifically, but it's not a adopted policy countywide on what our debt structure would look like. But we will be working on that, on a debt policy, and I think, like you said, we already have the fund balance policy. So those areas that they identified that we can strengthen up, we intend to do.
Do you have templates for sort of what the policies they're looking for?
Yeah, we've got a number of templates that we can forward to Mark to take a look at, yeah. And like I said, it's fairly unusual for counties in Kansas to have particularly debt policies and investment policies. There are a lot of restrictions in Kansas about what counties can and can't issue debt for, as well as they're very restrictive, investment statutes regarding what you can invest your money in Kansas. So I think those statutes tend to provide a lot of guidance that is somewhat redundant with adopting a formal policy. But nonetheless, if it's something you have time to do in advance of your next rating, it'd be good to be able to, just to say you've done it.
When you were here last, you mentioned that when the funds or the capital isn't being allocated, it would be in probably an interest-bearing account that may yield as much as a point even. And we were thinking that the interest rate on the funds might be closer to 2, and therefore our spread might be 1. It sounds like our spread could be a half or less, if I understood. Unless you think that would have changed.
It could be. It's at 1.258%, the rate on the new notes. I think one of the investment options that we've looked at is the state's municipal investment pool. And last I looked, I think the short-term, the overnight rate on that pool was almost the same rate. So I think your spread between the rate that you're paying on these notes and the investment earnings that you can get is going to even be less than half a percentage point.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
It is.
It's not free money, but it's pretty close to
It's
it.
close as I've seen.
If you'd have told me this money would be available at this price in the 1980s, I would have laughed at you.
Oh, yeah. I remember the 7 and 8% years, and actually it was higher than that even before then.
Any more questions? And on entertain a motion.
Motion to approve Resolution 2019-29, authorizing and directing the issuance and sale and delivery of general obligation temporary note series 2019-1 of Leavenworth County, Kansas.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you. If it'd be okay if the board could take just a few minutes
Oh,
to sign the
them
documents.
Yeah.
I think Gina has some
Oh,
documents for you to sign so that they can
Are these
go ahead and
the same
notify the
documents?
bidders.
We're getting
Yeah.
phone calls.
Go ahead.
Dana.
Yeah, I have a couple more. So I'm gonna, the first thing, and the first thing I'm gonna circulate is the resolution that you just approved. And that will need everyone's signature on it. And then I have a number of other things that just needs the chair. And there are 2 copies there, so as you're sending it around, don't worry about that.
don't have to sign this one.
Yeah, actually, no, you're good there.
Just sign,
Yeah,
yeah,
this
we just
sign
sign the
here
ones
sticker
that Gina
doesn't need
has.
it.
Okay.
And we got the right ones.
Yeah, this is the only one.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll circulate that, and that way Becky can have that copy. So 2 copies and then a second one coming. Okay, so I'm going to hand these to you. This is the document that says all of these documents are accurate. We've been working with Janet. 2 copies there, sorry. We'll flip the second page.
Just so I don't have to pay if the county defaults.
I just saw one, so.
We made sure to use your title there instead of.
Okay.
Well, I would
Is-
take the new one behind that.
I think.
And that is the federal securities annual disclosures that are required. Oh, sorry, second page there.
Oh, there was 2
Looked like there was
copies.
only one of those.
Yep,
Is there
the only
two?
one there.
No, okay. Only one there,
Say
too?
that.
There's 2 there.
That's why I
Yep.
just, yeah, I knew that.
I'd love to hear that.
That's the bid form.
Like I just saw all the videos and everything after. I would.
On the other one, too.
Even by video pictures, it's impressive.
Okay.
I do.
Like duplicate. I went back and deleted 8 of them, but I don't know why I did that. Somebody emailed me and said, make a duplicate copies of the logo.
Where is it usually?
Goes in here.
Well, here's back towards West Lawrence, East there, and Marysville. I think it's back in like Wyoming or somewhere.
But I assume it has a.
They did it, they ran it out
This goes back to you.
2 or 3 years ago, they ran it, this thing out. It's actually oil, burning oil.
Right.
Did he sign the other one to that one? Or did it go over
I
here?
think it's right here. Yes,
Okay.
I signed that one, so. That one can go to Becky if it has all.
This
the
one can go to
signatures.
Becky?
It has- Yep. that
Okay,
one.
doesn't need anything on this one back here.
No, that one's.
Back to Becky.
Is the best.
I did. Got another one?
Getting close.
We are very close.
I gotta watch that interest.
Like there's more paperwork with a house.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Like I said, worst case scenario, if I'm responsible.
That's one way to look at it.
I can even separate it.
Or we all are.
Yeah.
Make sure that I have everything I need here. These are all just for Janet.
Good some of the kids, basically, looking down to the tracks down by Bonner and watched it go by yesterday.
Oh, cool.
Make sure that David has his notary seal, and if so, then we can have you sign this.
He was probably going to get it.
Yep, that's what he was doing.
And hopefully it's not at his house.
Okay.
You're gonna
I'm
have to
gonna
stall.
set-
You'll have to-
What's this guy's name?
I just know Gina.
I can.
This
You think that
is
makes
all
sense?
involved bonds or all.
Well, I'll put them on to
Uh-oh, I'm not seeing a
Oh, that's
seal.
all right. How about this? I will leave the call and you guys get it.
There's more knowing than one notary.
Yeah,
recording
sometime
it,
today.
Right,
Okay.
we'll get it, all right.
I will leave this right now.
And I will sign it before, as soon as you get a notary in front of me, I'll sign it. She's on the way? Okay.
Oh, yeah. That way I can.
Do we need to wait, or can we move on? Well,
On the way.
that's good enough, just so she's got ink in her stamper.
Looks like you need to sit down and sign it.
Multitasker.
We'll have to go get a
Well,
notary.
while we're waiting, how often do they review bond ratings? What month of the year is that they do that?
Can I just pass this to Mark?
Yes. Usually what they do is, obviously they do a rating every
Stephanie,
time
I
you
think it's-
issue
I'm
that,
here.
right?
It's right here.
But typically,
They needed
I thought they needed it
every,
over.
they try reviewing the ratings. You haven't done a debt issuance every year. Now,
Is it on a calendar year, or is
No,
it
you'll
like?
have to
It's
go
on their
out.
schedule.
On their
sort of.
schedule.
Yeah. I think it, and sometimes they don't actually get the review done every year, but they do try to make an effort, if you're not issuing debt, to review the rating once a year.
Oh.
Really? That's what's
Maybe you need to
wrong?
fill it.
I think I was on here. No.
Yeah, you weren't flat.
All right, thank you.
Now you can hand it back over. Mark.
Are you ready for this one? Okay, so are we ready to move on then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to Mr. Angel's request on the traffic impact fee on a state highway.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Good morning.
As you may recall, a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Angel approached the board and requested a waiver of his traffic impact fee. I provided a memo for you, and I supplied the 3 previous resolutions for his business. You can see that he did pay a traffic impact fee each of those 3 times. Mr. Angel is here, will answer any questions that you have, as will I.
So what was the totals on that? You up around $6,000? I don't remember the total off the top of my head.
So the total for the most recent is $1,767. The one before that was $884. And the one before that was for 10 years, and that was, the resolution just said assess a traffic impact fee.
Remember what it was?
No, I can't. It's too long ago.
Okay.
Commissioner, if I could just maybe, in reviewing this, this is one of the things in a work session that we talked about, the no fee, the flat fee, and the full traffic assessment fee. We had a work session on it, and it's something that we're working on as staff to update that policy and bring back. While I don't know for sure where Mr. Angel would fall in that category, it's potential that it could be a no fee or at least a flat fee. Outside of that, when you look at the resolution that's in your packet that adopted the TIF, it really was set up to be a one-time collection versus a collection every time. I think in the mid-90s, they started collecting it on the special use permits. And I don't know if the intention was that every time they came back in, they were going to have to pay it again, but that's clearly not what the resolution anticipated. So I think it would be appropriate, not necessarily for the reason given as to waive this fee, but to waive the fee because as we update our policy, more than likely, it wouldn't be collected anyways. So just wanted to provide that information to you.
So you're saying it should initially be collected, but under the resolution, it's not allowed to be collected every time we adopt a
Well, under
special use
the,
permit?
yeah, under the special use permits, you can require it to be collected, whether the resolution says it has to be or not. Under a special use permit, you can apply conditions, and those conditions can be that he has to pay it, or anybody would have to pay it each time they renewed. That's not how it was initially implemented, but you can certainly require that. I believe that the policy going forward would not require that, so that's why I believe it would be appropriate to waive it in this case, because likely in the next couple of months, we're going to change that policy anyways.
And this property was always zoned commercial since the early 60s, I take it, and you could add a gas station or whatever there, and he wouldn't even be up here.
Right, and I think that's the other portion of this is where he's zoned. I think it probably falls in then, so. That's just kind of a staff briefing, and y'all can take that.
And his business just uses the state highway, pretty much.
So,
Yeah, I was
I'm
going
good
to
with that.
suggest, I don't know if this is time sensitive from Mr. Angel's application, but I was either going to suggest we table this till we have a work session and talk more about, whether we should make a 3-tier package on these TIF fees, or my feeling is I don't think they should be charged on renewals.
Absolutely.
So, you have something, Dave?
I think we ought to go ahead and just take the right action and waive it.
Yeah, I didn't know whether to make a motion to go ahead and waive his and set up a work session, or,
We've already had the work session once.
Right.
We're working on the new policy.
Yeah.
We'll bring that back to a work session for the
Right.
board to consider, so no reason to, no need to schedule that. We've already got that on the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay.
But certainly, I think for Mr. Angel, he has a permit, he has a SUP request in place. It's been approved with the condition of the fee. He technically cannot operate until that fee is paid right now. So if you waive the fee, then that allows him to continue. And I know, I think last time he was in, he mentioned that they weren't operating right now anyways, but you wouldn't want that to be a holdup.
yeah. And I feel if we're all on the same page, then instead of tabling this, go ahead and vote on Mr. Angel's today.
Well, I know he's been here multiple times as
Yeah.
well, so appreciate
Yes.
that.
So,
Is that your motion?
Move that we approve a waiver of the traffic impact fee for special use permit for Angels Excavating.
Second.
Have a motion, second, any further discussion? Voting.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioners.
And now we're ready for a request to set aside for Mr. Collins to set aside county policy.
I had a question for the council. Being that Mr. Collins is a county employee and being that this could impact his situation, would it be appropriate to meet in executive session?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commissioner, Commissioner Stieben had raised this issue with me before, which I appreciated. I've had some time to think about it. Inasmuch as Mr. Collins is not appearing before you this morning on this issue as a county employee, this matter is addressed in the past in open session. So unless you wish to get into personnel matters, that this matter should be addressed in open session.
Okay.
Is it a possibility that we would get into personnel matters in the discussion?
I would counsel the board, and I will be present, not to go into that issue. The issue, my understanding, is with respect to the policies on the construction of a road upon the request of an individual. As long as the topic is kept to that, within those boundaries, it's appropriate to do it in open session. And in fact, any action on this issue would have to be taken in open session, so I would suggest the deliberative process take place in open session as well.
I personally would prefer that we at least set the parameters for this discussion in terms of determining whether it's going to involve personnel in an executive session, and then we can determine how the discussion in this room is going to go. That's how I would view that the commission itself should meet together and set the guidelines for how this discussion is going to go.
I mean, I'm of the opinion I'm going to address this like I would Mr. Kelly or anybody else coming in front of the board. It's a parcel in question and there's a fee associated with it. So the fact that Mr. Collins is an employee has no relevancy to me as far as this goes. But
All agree? Okay. We're not getting into personnel. Okay, agreed?
agreed.
Agreed. Mr. Collins, go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
As most of you all know, Chris Collins, 33188 195th Street. more appropriate representation as how the issue has been handled to date would be Chris Collins, employee, 0 rights as a citizen of Leavenworth County. I received an invoice for $3,886.50 dated 1/31/19, which I see in the packet has now been changed to $3,557.60. I've questioned this invoice and asked for documentation as to why I owe this, and no other resident has been billed this numerous times to no avail. The only reason I have been able to find, based on my experiences in this situation, is the fact that my job can be held over my head. Based on the fact that I'm here before you today, still trying to resolve this matter against recommendation multiple times, not to bring it before you gives further reason to wonder where the documentation is. I'm not here in an effort to waste anyone's time. I've been trying to find answers for 9 months, and I'm ready to get this matter resolved. I've been asked what I want to get out of this coming before you today. It's pretty simple. I'm looking for clarification, treated with respect, and treated with respect and not as a third-class citizen, and most importantly, change if needed. That way, hopefully, no one else has to go through the nightmare that I have.
Any questions of Mr. Collins?
Chris, as I was looking at some of these photos that were in the packet, like, would you say that you guys frequently used or accessed the existing road that was in place before any improvements were made?
As far as frequently used, it wasn't a frequent use. It did get used on a regular basis, yes. But as you can see in the photos, there's no grass growing up. It was maintained by the county, bladed a few times a year. So it was a maintained road.
Yeah, it seems as though I've seen roads in worse condition. I don't know if I've seen fences closer to a road, but pretty close. There's a lot of close fences out there.
Yes, sir.
I think the issue here is the RIF money, the money that was pulled out of the township RIF, the road improvement fees that other people paid. That's the $3,500, is that correct?
They're saying the $35,5760 is materials that were placed on the road that wasn't billed.
But it was money that was paid. The Director of Public Works took money out of the Kickapoo Township RIF fund to pay for that. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay, and then there's a policy on how to get the money out of that account, because it's not really taxpayer money, it's somebody paid that fee when they build a house. That's where the $3,500 is coming from. That the county thinks needs to be put back into the RIF fund. So where that money comes from is what we got to decide to put it back in the RIF account.
My question is, it seems like there were a number of questions around either policy confusion, and I do realize that policy is fluid and does change, and we're talking about it even today, but I just can't imagine as any resident coming in to build a new home, being told a certain amount for a building permit to get your home under construction, and then somehow down the road there being some other variable cost that is unknown. I've never heard of that or seen that. I'm not saying that we don't have a policy like that, but I would question whether an individual has ever been told, hey, look, there could be additional expenses, or this $4,800 that you're paying now may not be substantial enough for what's been requested. Like, it just seems to me that with all the building permits that we issue, there's probably some times where we incur very little, if any, cost, and it's probably a net gain to the county. And then there's other times where it's at a loss to the county. We spent more than what was collected. At the end of the day, I think this is a very pro-development, board, it's been my opinion, and you've got a parcel of ground that's maybe generating very little tax dollars, that's now gonna have a nice home on it that's gonna generate $3,000 or some amount more than it has before every year from now till you name it. So to me, sometimes in these policies, it feels a little more penny-wise, dollar foolish, and I'm just trying to understand, one, if there have been instances where we've charged somebody nearly $5,000 for a building permit and then tried to come after them months later for additional fees, if we have examples of that. I've not been able to obtain it either, And then also, I think it's shown that we've got some policy issues or some things that were missed clearly between departments. And that's what I think this group should be really focused on, is how do we fix the missteps or misconfusion? Because I've looked at a building permit, and nowhere on there does it say there could be additional expenses. Or to your point, if something was taken out of a specific fund, like it's not on a resident to know what, number one, the policy is, number two, where do the dollars come from? Their job is to, one, pay an amount of money that they're told by the county, go build a home and increase the value of the county. Getting into this, let me get an estimate for what it may take to go build a home over here is more of a question for a general contractor and a site and a pad and construction, not access to a parcel that, again, per the pictures I've got, looks like it wasn't a poor access to begin with, other than there was clearly a fence that was in the right of way. But but I don't know enough. That's why I'm asking a
It was
question.
a minimum maintenance rated.
It wasn't even a minimally maintained. I have the process and the policy. When Mr. Collins decided to build his home on the location it was on an unmaintained stretch of right-of-way. So the right-of-way existed by the county, but we did not maintain it. It was unmaintained. We have situations where that has occurred in the last 5 years on multiple occasions. According to the policy at the time, which was adopted in 2015, there's a process. And the process is that Mr. Collins needed to make an application to the Public Works Department. They would have then brought that application to the board for consideration and approval. That step did not occur, didn't happen.
Why didn't that occur?
I do not know. The director at the time did not follow the policy, and I believe that they would have been aware of the policy because the policy would have been adopted while they were the director.
Did he ask you to make an application?
No, sir.
So that portion of the policy was not followed. As you go on down through the steps in that policy, one of the things that was required is that it be engineered, and it sounds like now that possibly on several occasions they failed to require anybody to have engineering work done, including Mr. Collins. And again, he was not notified of it. I don't think it was intentional on his part in any way. Just don't think he was notified that that was a requirement. And from the sounds of it, maybe they didn't require anybody to do the engineering.
Well, to say, Mark, is it fair to assume that most of the gravel roads, minimally maintained or not, aren't engineered roads to begin with?
No, I think they are engineered, actually. If they're roads that we built, we do engineer them, and we have to, one of the things that you have to take into consideration is any stormwater runoff, how it impacts.
Most of these
any
roads have been in
flood.
existence far before some of these policies were in place, so.
Correct, but if we're building a new road today, we would
Agreed.
definitely, and that's what was happening.
There's a big difference between a through road and a.
We were
dead end.
building a new road in this case.
So the document, though, that you're talking about where he should have applied and he should have made application,
Right.
does that document exist? Is there an application?
There is a process, yes, and,
But-
but
but
he
it-
wouldn't have known that because he was not told that.
He wouldn't have known that, but there is a document in planning and zoning that exists.
It wouldn't be planning and zoning, it would be public
Or
works.
public works that exists. So in that document, does it specify that engineering is required?
I don't know. I have not seen it. I can't say that 100%. I can just tell you, I'm reading through the policy here. So I have not seen that application. So we'll just go and pass that. Again, he wasn't notified. The road was built. I don't think there's any way that you can come back now and say that there was any fault by Mr. Collins in that case. The next process, the next part of the policy states that the requester will pay the in-place cost of materials to construct the rural gravel road in accordance with the latest edition of the road construction and stormwater drainage standards. That's the question that has come to the board today. When it was brought to my attention that the policy was not followed, I reached out to Mr. Collins and said, there's a policy, that says you have to pay for the materials. In the past, the board has allowed your RIF fees to go towards that, which was $3,000 in this case, but you have to pay the difference. And that difference at the time, I think it was $38.86, but they had applied some material where it was a different part of the road. They updated the total, and it's $35.56 is now the difference between what he paid and what needs to be paid.
Did you have that conversation with him about that and understand that you would have had to pay the difference on the road price?
In January, after the road was built, that would have been late January, early
Yeah,
February.
the building permit was,
Nine
the building
months
permit
after-
was issued
yeah,
in June.
9 months after the road was done.
But, so you did have that conversation and you did understand that you would be required to pay that?
Well, the conversation was that if it had gone before the board, materials, all those numbers come together, that yes, the total would be whatever for materials. My issue with that is other citizens of the county have had their roads upgraded and they have not paid those fees that I was being assessed.
Is that true?
I don't believe that's the case. I believe that we have even shown, and I think a couple of the commissioners have asked me, because Mr. Collins did engage two of the commissioners to intercede on his behalf, and I did provide the documentation that shows that we have had other people who have paid, or their RIF fees that they paid totally covered the cost, or that through board action, it was approved that they donate additional right-of-way in exchange for the road being open.
And
Those three things occurred.
And that was one of those that was brought to me. Said the gentleman, in exchange for the fees, was giving up right-of-way on the road. The very first meeting in 2017, January, it's in the minutes that resident gave up for the right-of-way. We gravelled his driveway. So it was
And it
not
was
in exchange for the fees.
It was approved by the road, or by the board. So,
But Chris, at no point were you, again, told about the application? Was the policy provided to you, or did you know there'd be additional fees? It seems like 6 months later, we found out there were a number of missteps relative to personnel, and now we're trying to go back and solve it. And it feels like to me, if it was any just average Joe, we would have never done that. The fact that we have access, given his status with the county, doesn't look or feel right to me, but.
well, I think that a waiver of policy requires board action, and I think I've told Chris that several times over the last 10 months. I've told Chris that several times, that a waiver of the policy requires board action. I'm not allowed to waive the policy.
Sure.
So once it was brought to my attention, my option is have him pay the difference, which would be per policy, or you have to get board approval.
Well, the thing I'm trying to figure out now is, in the beginning conversations, Chris,
Yes, sir.
you were saying you felt like you were being held to a higher standard or a different standard because you're a county employee, because when they did your road, they expected you to pay a fee. And you knew of other roads that were done where they didn't pay the fee. So I gave you, in
No,
those
sir.
road instances.
When all this started, my request was to leave it millings. That was where my conversation started. I requested to leave the road millings
Instead of gravel.
instead of the gravel. It was, our house is the only house, 2 cars in and out of it. We're not going to be beating it up. County could have kept my RIF money from the permit. My request was to leave the road alone. I was informed by the director at that time that we've made other citizens of the county upgrade, and he has to hold me to those standards.
But that's why you didn't want to pay anything, because you wanted to leave it millings, right?
I don't want to pay anything because above and beyond to that amount, my building permit would have been like $8,500. Nobody else has paid $8,500 for their building permit.
Right, but what I'm getting at is, in the beginning, you said you weren't going to pay it because you thought it was only because you're a county employee you were being made to pay it, and the other people
That's correct.
you knew of didn't have to pay it. So I sent you evidence that these other people you were talking about did pay. And so then now, between then and now, you're saying you just want to pay a lesser
When did
amount.
But Jeff, the examples I saw were 6,800, like, it seemed that there was a different amount that
Yeah,
were
they
paid
were
on those
more.
properties,
They were
probably because of
more.
the policy.
Yeah, they were more.
Right.
One was like 6,800, and the other one was like $8,000, but traded for real estate too.
Okay.
But what I'm getting at is, in the beginning, you weren't going to pay at all, and you thought it was because you're a county employee why you had to pay. So I sent you.
I thought this, me being asked to pay this over-exaggerated fee that nobody else has had to pay is because I'm a county employee, yes, sir.
But when you say nobody else had to pay, I showed you that the other examples you used, they did pay.
Which examples were those, sir?
Gilliland and
In exchange for right-of-way?
one of them was.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's when I sent you that we gravelled his driveway in exchange for the right-of-way.
Driveway was a bad term. They shouldn't have put driveway in the meeting minutes. They didn't mean driveway. They meant the county road when they said driveway. I talked to the commissioner. They said driveway in the meeting minutes. They didn't mean his actual driveway from the county road to his house. They meant from Millwood Road back to his actual driveway.
Just backing up real quick, though, you didn't find out about any further amount that might be due until 6 or 7 months after the building permit was issued, is that correct?
Correct.
So that's one of my biggest issues, is that's a real problem.
Then
We're
why-
trying to fix it.
Right, and I'm
6
just
or
trying to
7
get
months
to,
later.
but what I'm trying to get to is then why did you say you didn't have to pay it if you didn't know there was an amount to pay?
Well, as I understood it, I thought there was the conversation of if you go to one of these other property owners and it looks like it's a like circumstance to what you have, and their amount was, albeit more than yours, far less than what the county's asking, right there, it doesn't look as though it's apples to apples.
But it's
right? So
not,
I
it's
can't
not
help but
far
ask
less.
questions.
It's not far less, though.
Couple
It is-
grand?
No, it is not.
6,800 versus 80-some hundred?
No. He's being asked to pay $65.56 total. He paid $3,000.
No, he paid
With
40,
his-
I have the building permit.
Paid $3,000 in RIF fees.
RIF.
I'm talking about RIF only. Those people all paid $6,500 in RIF fees is what he was, one of the ones he's referring to. Paid $6,500 in RIF fees. Some of the other people came in and paid a cash just for the materials themselves. Wasn't part of the building process. So I don't believe
Chris,
he
were
is
you
being
given the
asked to
option
be,
on the additional right-of-way? Was that ever a conversation with you,
No, sir.
7 months later?
because it did not go to the board. So
What I'm
Which was
getting
another
at
miss.
is, are we just talking about now the difference in what you were originally asked to pay versus a different amount? Because in the beginning, you didn't want to pay anything. And then I said, you're going to have to pay because these other people paid, and here's the proof that they paid. You didn't think they did. So I proved to you that, yeah, they did. And since then, I think you're saying, okay, I'll go ahead and pay, but not the amount that you're asking for. Is that what's going on?
I had made an offer, when this all started, it was brought to me that, how to word this, that favoritism was shown with my road, that I was given preferential treatment. I couldn't get any answers, so
Because you were
I
told you didn't have to pay at all?
I contacted Mr. Lujan at that point. That was February 10th. I called him and said, hey, they're telling me I got special treatment in the construction of my road. Is this true?
Because you didn't have to pay at all? Pay anything? Is that,
He
Is that what
paid
you're
his RIF.
Okay.
Your RIF went toward the project,
Yes.
okay.
but not your traffic.
I got-
Just to be clear,
I got
you
a
can do all the
building permit just
allocations
like
as far
everybody
as you
else.
want, but he paid nearly $5,000. It's not as though
Yeah.
it wasn't very
The
much.
traffic
Right,
impact can't be used for this, correct?
correct.
I was just talking about the expense to a resident, which is, again, what I think we should be talking about as far as policy goes, is what it really should be. And in no way, shape, or form can I see a scenario where somebody comes in and pays nearly $5,000 and then may get an invoice later down the road with an amount to be determined. I mean, who builds a house and says, well, pay $180,000 now, but there could be another bill, 6 months, might be $20,000, might
Yeah,
be $40,000.
And I
Like,
think-
that just doesn't.
and I think we're saying the same thing. What I'm asking is, in the beginning, you just said you didn't want to pay at all, and then
I got
now,
my building permit and did pay. I did.
the additional
What's the
amount,
RIF
then,
The RIF.
the RIF.
Is it
1,000.
standard? Is that a standard?
Yes.
Yeah, a road improvement fee is, yeah.
Okay.
It goes up every 6 months or something.
Right.
Actually, last time it went down because we split the RIF and the diff.
Okay.
But yes, it's typically, it's
It started out, it was every 6 months, it was like $250 increase or something.
Yeah, it used to be $6,500, give or take. I think, Crystal's not here, but I think it was $6,500.
The total
And
cost of
that
the building
fee-
permit was $6,870.
And that
was with
fee
RIF fees.
excludes materials, am I correct? on
Because
the RIF?
most homes are built
Most
on roads that
homes
already
don't use it.
exist. This was a road that had to be open, so the materials are separate. And we have had other instances, again, where people have come in and we did make them pay for the materials.
So at the time that a building permit is issued, no person asking for a building permit would know with certainty how much the materials were going to cost?
No, this is just for to open up a road that's,
Right.
If everything was the
In
same.
that case,
Yeah, if everything was the same, let's just say it's any of the other folks that came in. They would come in and they would want to reopen a piece of right-of-way that has not been previously maintained. I call it reopening, they can call improving, whatever. So they would come in and they would say, we want to do that. By policy, they would hire an engineer, or they'd make an application and the board would approve it. They would hire an engineer. The engineer would give them the estimates based on the quantity estimates. We would give them what we felt it was going to cost to improve that road back to the standards it needed to be. Then they would pay it. That's the policy at the time. The policy now, they would have to pay for the full amount. They wouldn't get the benefit of the labor and the equipment that the county provided as well. I mean, the total cost of opening that stretch of road, which is 1,200 feet, a little over 1,200 feet, was about $25,000. That was the total cost.
Mark, at one point,
Nobody
I
would
was
have had
told
to
you
pay
couldn't even
that.
drive down this road. Yet I've seen all the pictures, and it looked like it's in better condition than a lot of gravel roads that I know.
Well, it wasn't gravel.
20
The
years
fence was
ago.
in the middle.
The fence is closed,
in the
but the
middle of the
road
right
wasn't
of
in
way.
poor condition.
He would not have been allowed to build his home there without improving the road. It was not a maintained road.
So
And I'm wondering if it shouldn't have been a private road to begin with. Having these conversations, but.
Mark, if we'd have followed policy,
Record would
he would have had an engineer, the engineer would have told him, it's gonna be this much more added to your,
Yes.
and then if we'd have followed the policy, you would have known ahead of time.
I guess I don't understand why I wouldn't have been allowed to build on this road when we currently have a Millings Road that is currently having houses being built on it in the county.
Where's that at?
Donahue, east of 155th.
Right.
That's a minimally maintained road. This road was not a minimally maintained road. I have an email from the Public Works Director that specifically states it was an unmaintained stretch of road.
So we
And
were
I think even there's some confusion, because it's hard to believe that statement when you look at the pictures of, I mean, I can show you some unmaintained roads and what they look like. They don't look like that picture.
I think it just depends then on, it's maintained by the county. It doesn't mean it's not maintained by the property owner, correct?
Well, somebody was
Somebody,
doing something
but-
to that road, and I don't think that it was the property owner, but.
So did you know that when you were asked about this, did you know that, I mean, you were informed that you were gonna have to bring this road up to standards according to policy? You were informed of that, correct?
Not per policy, I was informed that I had to bring this road up to standards because we had made other citizens do that, and if they did not make me do that, it would look bad.
Well, but the reasoning that it would look, I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the reason that was done is because there was a policy. And
That was never provided.
therefore, they're telling you that there's gonna be some extra cost to bring that road up. You were aware of that?
I did not know I would be incurring any extra costs, no, sir. I was told they would be using the RIF money from my building permit. I got my building permit, and as far as I knew, they were gonna be using the RIF money from my building permit that I purchased.
But if it was,
Think
what if
about
the
it.
cost was above $3,000, where did you think the extra money would come from?
That was, I mean, I don't handle that situation, sir.
The property taxes he currently pays? I don't know, John, again. It's a good
Well,
question.
I mean, but we do it the same way with everybody else that is in this situation. Everybody else has to pay to upgrade the road.
My issue is.
And then the county takes it over
If you complete a
after.
building permit, and the building permit makes no reference to any of these things, if there's a policy and the resident isn't educated as to the policy, and then 6, 7 months later, we figured out we made a mistake, own the mistake, fix the policy. I want to make sure that the policy goes out with every building permit we issue. I don't want there to be any confusion. This is
Well, that's why I'd
ridiculous.
like
It's
to
our-
know what this
It's our fault,
application
it's
says.
accountability, own it, move on.
But
So
not
what
very
did-
many permits go
what did
out on
planning and
unimproved
zoning
roads.
tell you?
Just in general, policies that could impact any
Because
resident should probably.
You
go
went
out.
to planning and zoning to ask about a building permit, or?
I went to planning and zoning and I put in my application for the permit
Uh-huh.
and I got my permit.
Before,
At what time did you go talk to Public Works about reopening the
Yeah.
roads, Chris?
This was probably, the first conversation was when we were first talking about, we had not even split the property yet. The subject had came up at work, sitting when I was discussing where we were talking about splitting, and somebody they knew the area, knew it was a Millings Road, and we had just upgraded 219th, the first portion at that point, and they were saying, we just upgraded that, they're probably gonna make you upgrade. So that's when I said we were happy with the Millings Road. That's when I inquired about, hey, is there any possibility of leaving this millings? And that's when I was told, no, it has to be upgraded, because that's what we've done in the
By
past.
planning and zoning or by
No,
Director of Public
This is
Works?
the Director of Public Works.
Okay. Okay.
And that is the policy though, correct, Mark? That's
Yes,
what we
that is the
require.
policy, yes.
And everybody
It's the
else is
policy
applying,
today,
that's what
it's
we
the policy
require
at the
right
time,
now.
And it was the policy before then, yes, sir.
Is there still pending litigation on this road?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, there is no current pending litigation. With respect to any legal implications regarding the improvement of that road, I'd suggest that that matter be discussed in executive session in recognition of the legal interests of the county.
I was just looking for a yes or no. But thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Commissioner, you know I can't give you
I
a
know
yes or no
that.
answer.
I know. Answer a question with a question.
I think there's clearly been a number of mistakes and probably I don't think anything was intentional. That's the worst part of all of it, is that I judge more on intent. Mistakes do happen. We need to be a lot better, so there are far fewer. But I think going after an individual resident, regardless of name or position, several months later for amounts of money that they had no idea would be due, I can't stand behind in good conscience. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't care who or how or where the mistakes were made, or, again, the county does make them. Let's not confuse ourselves.
But
I'd
But
rather
if I
just,
accidentally deposit money into someone else's account, I'm just giving a hypothetical, and I don't realize it right away, and it takes time, and all of a sudden I find out, oh, that person then should not owe me back the money?
well, and.
If I find out later,
No,
that-
that's-
I'm
sure.
saying
That's
that-
devil's
that-
advocate, and what I was
I'm
told
trying
was
to play
when.
devil's advocate here.
Several months later, when I think the issue came back up, it was my understanding that Chris went to some of these other property owners and found out what expense they paid, and I think even offered the difference, and at the end of the day, I wouldn't even have suggested that to him. I think that's of high moral character to even make an offer like that. I think 6, 7 months later, when we make a mistake, we have to own it and make sure we don't make it going forward.
Mark, how many months have you been trying to collect this money?
10 months,
For 10 months.
yes, sir.
Is that your understanding? Has he been trying to collect the,
Since the beginning of February. So
and
9
it's
months.
been the same specified amount?
I think the amount recently changed because we had Public Works verify it, but it changed by $300.
But to be clear, you guys
Went
had
down by
exchanges January, February, when this came about, and then there was absolute silence for 6 months?
5, 6
I think
months.
everybody assumed it got resolved, and the reality is it didn't, which again, I have another issue with, because if the county is owed money, regardless of who it is, we should probably have a process and procedures in place, and it shouldn't be a surprise 6 months later that there's still a balance outstanding. And I don't care if that's from a vendor or a taxpayer, but I'd argue the taxpayer probably needed to know about it immediately.
Right, and
But
I
this
think the
is part of the
delay
legal
in notifying Mr. Collins after it was until we got a letter from an attorney. Were you guys on the board then, when we received a letter from an attorney?
It did not come to our attention until after one of the adjacent property owners filed a complaint about the work being done. At that time, we didn't know who it was for or anything else, but they filed a complaint, and we followed up on it and said, so what's up with this road? That's when I had the email from the Public Works Director that says we have an application from a citizen who wants to build on this stretch of road, and we're going to reopen an unmaintained stretch of road. Everything at that time we felt, that was in May of last year, we thought the policy had been followed. Then we'd let the property owner know that it was a right-of-way, so on and so forth. Then in December, I think it was, we received a follow-up from the property owner's legal representation that they thought that we had done something wrong. So as we began to gather the documentation for that, that's when we found out that indeed the policy had not been followed. It's not that we did anything wrong with opening the right-of-way, but that the policy wasn't followed. That's when it was brought to my attention that the amount of the materials was not reimbursed to the county. That's when I asked Mr. Collins that's when I let Mr. Collins know that he owed the difference. That was late January, early February.
And you did also reiterate to him that he could be put on a plan of payment, and it wouldn't be something that would have to be.
I told him I would work with him on payments if that's what was needed.
I guess my issue about the statement from May 2nd is you thought that all policies had been followed, but yet you just stated earlier that it has to come before the board for approval. Am I wrong that you guys are in the board meetings and you know nothing had come before the board? So at that point, that rates, I mean, that was...
Actually, several had come before the board, or in the 3 years I've been here, several have come before the board. At the time, nobody told me it was Chris Collins, and I don't track every stretch of road.
That it was Chris Collins?
No,
mean,
I didn't know that the people who were already in, it wasn't one of those, Chris. I didn't know who it was for. I just knew that it was reopening at the request of a property owner. That's what. It didn't matter that it was Chris or not. It mattered that nobody had actually come to the board. Didn't matter if it was your name or somebody else's name, Chris.
Well, and it sounds like it should have came before the board when it was first determined or found out, whether that was January, February, whatever that time frame was. I still think the same result that I would be promoting today would be, it's our mistake, we need to own it, apologies. This has been, in my opinion, kind of a circus in how we've handled it, so.
And I guess my next issue is what the amount of materials that are put on a road. What are the standards for that? Because I've been told by supervisors at work that, in their opinion, there's too much rock that was put on the road anyway. So then I'm being billed for material that necessarily shouldn't even be there.
The Director of Public Works should have gave quantities on a project.
I think that's where if it would have been engineered, they would have got the quantities from the engineer, but since it wasn't, it would have been staff, which would be acceptable. I mean,
Right, it just seems
they're
like some of the
engineers.
confusion has been inquiring about these other parcels, that something was brought up to an engineered solution, and sounds like most, if not all of them, really haven't been. Yet, that continues to be thrown around, and I just, far too many moving pieces and parts and variables, creating a lot of confusion for me. I think we've clearly found some gaps and holes and errors that were made.
That's
so,
no doubt.
Well, I think what we're up against right now is what's the legal policy on removing RIF money from the township fund?
And by the way,
The
who
request.
approves that, though?
We do.
Understood. What I'm saying is, as the resident doesn't know where the
Right.
money's coming from,
Right.
how much, what
Right.
funds, where it can,
Right.
where it can't. That's not a
But
resident responsibility.
how many times in the past has RIF money been taken out of township funds without board approval?
And that's what we need to figure out, a system and a policy or a means of figuring that out to make sure that that doesn't occur again.
Well, there is a policy. The problem is
But
when
a
somebody
process,
doesn't
a checks and
follow it.
balances.
Yeah, how do we-
Policies are good when
how do we
executed
know?
correctly.
When they're
So
followed,
when
right,
we-
there needs to be a
when
checks
these
and balances.
things are identified, we address them.
I thought the policy was very clear. It had to have board approval to take money out of the
Policy.
RIF account.
Policy's very clear that it should have came before the board, before the road
Right.
was ever.
So the Public Works Director at that time should have
Policy
brought this
was,
in front of the Board of County Commissioners.
the policy was not followed. It should have came before the Board of County Commissioners at
And-
the time.
and
When
that's-
Mr. Collins first came in.
So we've established that policies weren't followed.
Right.
We know that, but just like Vicky said, if money's inadvertently put into another account, I think that's a good example. You still have to follow what the rules are, even if there was a mistake made, because everybody else in the county is having to pay. So we can't waive it for one when everybody else, because we would be setting a precedent for the entire county, 80,000 people, by not following the rules for one.
And I've requested that documentation that the others have. In 9 months, I have not gotten it.
Gotten what?
The documentation where other people have paid this. Like,
Chris, I sent you that.
Right, well,
I
one was
emailed
right
that
of
to
way.
you.
That's not an additional amount.
Do
Actually,
what?
one was right of way, right? Additional
One
right of way
was,
was given.
yep.
And the other one was,
$6,800.
right, which is the difference between what you paid.
well, one was no permit was issued. It was just a road that was opened.
It was just road work, it wasn't a building permit.
Correct.
So what are you
Do
saying
we
you
have other
didn't get?
instances of this?
I'm not aware of,
Because this doesn't happen on us.
this is not a regular occurrence.
So I'm still stuck on, I showed you, off the top of my head, 2 other people that paid, and you're saying you didn't get proof that they paid. Is that what you're saying?
Based off of what you gave me, no, they did not pay any extra. I've spoke with the homeowner at that address. They did not pay any extra, sir.
Did you see what the amount was, that was
Their
the
building-
cost to the RIF? What was,
So one was,
Their building permit was $6,870.70.
okay.
RIF at that time was $5,750.
Okay, what was the cost to complete the work, the project work?
I do not know. That is a question for,
But what I'm
But
saying
they
is
never
that.
got billed or invoiced anything further than that amount, is
No,
your
sir.
point?
I'm just saying that the one thing that can be looked at is the comprehensive detail on any given project to find out what was the cost of materials. I mean, that's what we're talking about, the cost of materials. We're not talking about the cost of labor, correct? I'm in this
No.
situation, we're talking cost of materials,
and
correct?
from the beginning of this process, the cost of materials of this bill has
Went down.
already gone down. So if I had paid previously the initial amount, who was gonna, am I owed that, would I have been owed the $250 extra that they were trying to overcharge at that time and then found a mistake? How many other mistakes are there in the comprehensive detail? Because the very first line is for brush burning.
Right.
That didn't happen at my location. So how many other details are there in there that were mislabeled and are still labeled as being at my road?
Chris, I think it'd be inaccurate for you to say they were trying to bill you for brush burning. That's not part of the materials line item.
So why did the amount get adjusted? You explained that to me yesterday.
Yeah. So-
From-
When I asked them to review it, because I knew this was coming to the board, they went back in and reviewed what was actually billed to that project, and the superintendent of Road and Bridge said this line item should not have been credited to him. That's my understanding of why it was adjusted.
But we do have to get the money back into the township fund, correct?
Correct.
Because it was taken out without following policy. So if we got to take the money from LCDC or St. Vincent Clinic, we got to get the money back into the township fund. Am I correct?
Legally.
Because individuals
I might
pay
have
that
recommended
fund.
Public Works or the general fund, but I get your point.
Mr. Chairman, my
It
understanding.
does have to go back in the account.
Yeah, I'm not.
My understanding of the operation of the RIF account is, as you alluded to earlier, it is not a generally assessed tax. It's a tax that's paid by specific individuals for specific use within a specific area.
I consider it a fee, not a tax.
Well, excuse me, a fee.
And somebody paid that money for a road improvement when they bought their building. So we have to put the money back in that township fund.
For their township.
So,
Do you agree, Commissioner? It's your area.
say that again.
We have to put the RIF money that
Back
was
in.
taken out without following policy back in the Kickapoo Township Fund.
That township.
Yes.
So we have to, the money's got to come somewhere. And Mr. Jack did not like LCDC. And I'm sure St. Vincent's Clinic don't want it either.
So I'm still back to you, Chris. In the beginning, you said you didn't want to pay the fee at all. Is what you're asking
That's
for?
not what we ever
today?
told you, sir. In the beginning, we told you, my wife and I, we sat down, her grandmother, her
Yeah.
father was there also. We said we are more than happy to pay this, but we want to see in black and white why we owe this and nobody else has paid this.
but how?
And if you didn't see it in black and white, you weren't going to pay it.
That's correct, because
Isn't that what I just said?
technically, that's no proof that
Isn't that what I
anybody else
just
paid
said?
it.
Is
It's
that what I
not.
just said? You weren't going to pay it.
If you
in the
can't show me
beginning.
documentation where others had.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So are you asking today to not pay it at all, or is it a different amount that you're asking for?
I had offered a different amount in the beginning. After the process, the harassment, the BS that I've been through, the fact that I didn't want this upgraded to begin with, like I said, you could have used our RIF money for somebody else. I could have cared less, wanted to leave the road alone. The fact that we're allowing others to build on the same type of road that we wanted to build on. No, I'm not gonna, I do not want to pay anything, no, sir.
So you had offered to pay $25.50?
I had previously, yes, sir.
So you're retracting that offer?
Yes, sir.
How did the 2550, Chris?
The 2550 came about, where I was starting to go with that earlier. When all this come about, I got this bill for $3,800, which on top of my permit fee would have put my permit at around $8,500. I contacted the old public works director because I was being told that I got special treatment. I was like, was there real special treatment that happened in this situation? He informed from the beginning of the time when we started talking to the time that my permit was issued, the RIF fee had been lowered for the building permit. And that's where I was like, at that time, I said, no problem, you know, if that's what other people have paid, I'm willing to come to the table with that, pay this $25.50, the difference. I was denied that amount at that time. I've been denied that amount since. I tried to come to the table and meet at those terms. So.
And that's where I was headed with my question was, if it's that amount difference, then I don't have an issue with it. But now you're saying you want to pay it all, so this is a different ballgame now.
So if the board here said, and I'm not saying that we would say this, but if we did say, we'd take your 2550 and we'd eat the 1,300 because of all the mistakes that were made, you would not be acceptable with that?
If this will end the situation and end this matter, yes, I'll accept it.
And see, I wouldn't have recommended that. I mean, no different than the individual earlier. You know, when you think about what people are paying to build a home to ultimately pay property taxes, we're not creating a ton of value out where he's at. We're not providing all kinds of services and infrastructure and anything else. Like, we made a mistake. It's okay. It happens. The fact that we're dragging Chris through several months of this, I think, is a travesty. And it doesn't matter if it's Chris or Joe or Sue.
But this is the amount he offered.
I understand that, but several months later, after going through this, I'd revoke it myself. I tried to do the right thing, even though I don't think you needed to pay it. We made a mistake. If you come in and all of a sudden the RIF's lower than it was in the past, all of a sudden Joe Public got a win. How often do you get to pay the county less? If a mistake had been recognized right then, after the fact, then I think it's all got to be timely as well. I mean, following up on something 30 or 60 days later is one thing. Following up on it 8 months later and then 15 months later is a whole other.
But Mark's been trying to collect this for 10 months.
But that's 18 months. Because he didn't try to collect it until 6 months after the permit was issued. 7 months after.
That nobody knew about it until a letter came from an attorney.
And we found out about it by dumb luck, and now we're trying to fix it. And I can't stand that. That's very poor, in my opinion.
Well, I just think that goes back to my having deposit money put into the wrong account and not finding out about it for a while until you have to be having an audit or, whatever it comes to your attention, and all of a sudden it's like, well,
But I think the
I shouldn't have to
difference,
put it back into someone else's account because it was taken out of mine. I mean, that I was.
Right, but then you go do the research, and it's like, okay, could I have given additional right-of-way, or have I already given additional right-of-way? Like, I think there's a lot of variables to it. None of these opportunities were fortune to Chris, and that's our mistake.
There's a lot of variables to it. My question is, how do you get department heads to follow policy? I mean, it's simple. You got policies and you got department heads that refuse to follow them. Even if you terminate them, they still act like they still don't care. And it's not your fault, Chris, at all. I understand. It is not your fault.
and I think the difference in fee works to your point. The difference, the amount would have made is about the same, so.
Well, then I look at how many hours and all of the people involved, and I can tell you that negative, because I've done
that's
the
true.
math on what everybody makes per
Right.
hour.
That's right.
Not a good use of time, energy, or resources.
So let's end this. So, Mr. Herring, you had a
I think
comment?
we need to comment.
I believe, he was the engineer or surveyor on this
Whoa,
project.
whoa, whoa.
Joe Herring, Herring Surveying, 315 North Fifth.
Morning.
Thank you for acknowledging me. I have several concerns with this, but most importantly, it sounds like you're getting to a point of resolution to resolve this issue.
We are.
The Pauley family donated additional right-of-way without compensation. You said that
And
Seaver Morgan donated right-of-way, which I did see. He did donate right-of-way, but there was a lot of discussion about it for his removal. So why can't we just use that?
Yeah. And if policy would have been followed, and this would have came before the board, it may have not been a,
That's right. But that's department head issue.
that is a department head issue.
That's not a citizen of the county
And that's right.
issue.
So how much easement did he, I mean,
10 foot for the entire length of the property.
which is how many acres?
It was 1,100 feet.
Wouldn't be an acre,
About half an acre.
half acre.
About half an acre, maybe.
Wasn't compensated. Polly's family was not compensated for their donation of right-of-way.
But they didn't request.
You said, you
They
did
didn't
math on that,
request
it's a
to
half
be
acre.
compensated.
It's
No,
about,
at that
it's
time,
about.
So based on the property we were trying to buy, so that'd be about $4,000 in value.
Give the
Right,
right-of-way. It wasn't
that's what I said.
No, because of the, yeah.
They were enforced.
But we need to
You
figure out
give
where
the
we're gonna
right-of-way
where
or
we're
this
gonna get the
doesn't
money
happen.
put back
So they
into
gave the
the
right-of-way.
Oh, I agree.
I think it's a fair situation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right.
Well, I think the additional right-of-way, and even how it came about, is more than sufficient to cover this balance. Now, we may still need to figure out how to fix the fund that was
Yeah, it has to
taken out
go
of,
back into the fund.
but I don't think the property owner in this case owes another nickel, in my opinion.
I'll entertain a motion on anything.
Is there any recommendations from staff on this?
Staff has to follow policy. Policy says that Mr. Collins still owes $3,500 and some odd dollars. That's the policy. That's what we have to go with.
I make a motion that we accept the 10-foot of right-of-way that was donated for, in lieu of the amount owed.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussions, Mr. Collins? Voting,
No.
Aye.
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 Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chris.
Now we need to discuss where we're gonna find funds to put back into the township.
Which is how much exactly? Is it 1,300, 2,500?
How many other policies have
Or
not been followed by
3,800.
department heads?
It's either 13, 25, or
We
38.
need to know these things.
Yeah.
There's three figures.
Do we know any other instances where policy has not been followed by department heads?
I think if we knew that, we would address it.
Okay, that's what I just want to make sure.
I just want to see something done to figure out some kind of a system. Maybe there needs to be more than one person who begins to open a road, I mean, you know, that looks at whether or not everything has
Well,
been
we've
followed
changed,
to do
we've changed
so.
the policy. We don't do it now.
Forever,
Okay.
since Jesus was a little baby, if there's a paper road, but it's not physically there, and somebody wants to build a house down that road, it's always been known in policy that if that person wants to open that road up and get it up to current county road standards, they pay it out of their pocket, and then we take over
That's what
maintenance
I-
from then on.
We
They can
really
use-
don't pay it out of your pocket because you got county equipment and county
Oh,
labor
yeah, we
out
don't-
there.
if
You're
the
getting
county opens it for you-
$30,000 worth of work done.
Yeah, if the
Yeah, I
county
remember
does
they
the work
help
for you, then it
with
really doesn't
Right.
cost you that much.
I understand that, but if you hired Mr. Angel, not picking on you, but yeah, I am, you're not gonna work for what we work
Right,
for.
right.
You don't work for FEMA rates.
And that's where I was going with Chad's point, is that's just the way it's always been, whether or not he was told that.
Right.
I have a hard time believing, working where he works, he does not know that is standard operating procedure.
Well, it seems like to me it's a prime candidate for a private road, and it should have
And if it
been his
would,
Then apply
responsibility and
for it
not
as-
ours, and
this
this
And
would have
if-
never happened.
if policy would have been followed, they would have came to this board, we would have went out there and looked at it.
But we
or I
won't take
would
over,
have.
but we won't take over a road that's millings.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
just
well-
not
But
up to
no, it
current
would
county
be-
road standards.
That's why we were into the private issue.
Right.
And that's where that's came from.
I
Yeah,
think that.
Taxpayers should not subsidize these road openings.
And I think that I'm not, and I didn't vote the way that I did for that, it was because if they donated easement,
Right.
fine, then we will take that. But we have to still, I'm going back to, where are we going, we have to get the money reimbursed into the fund.
Right.
Because accidentally,
I agree.
that money was taken out of that fund and placed someplace else.
But I think
Whether it was
oftentimes
on
we-
purpose or not, it was done. So now there's an obligation to return it.
Sure. And I think oftentimes
And where
we
are
kind
we
of miss
gonna
the
get
big
that
picture
money?
in that you've got a parcel of ground that's generating $1,200 a year in personal property tax, and now it's going to generate $4,000 a year in personal property tax this year going forward. Like, that is a value to us.
and
And coming it next to very little
And I
cost going
understand
forward
that.
versus.
But that's not
the
what
work
we
that
were
It is, but
discussing
we had
in this
almost $30,000
matter.
in getting at that point, so
So
you're
we're,
talking.
we're gonna have a while before it pays for
10-year
that.
ROI.
10 years to get your return.
That's
And-
pretty good, 10%.
And because of our policy change now, where we're not gonna take right away, we're gonna
Right.
buy it.
And like I said, that's why
exactly what we
that's
just
why I
did.
supported, I did not know they gave additional right of way.
That's what
And
we
I
just
didn't
did.
either. That,
I am definitely against land grabbing without fair compensation.
Very true.
I'm against it. Always have been. It's happened to me,
Well,
and it's
the
ridiculous.
problem I have with that whole thing is
Just-
that was brought up at the very last minute for the discussion, and it wasn't included in the entire list
Yeah,
of our.
that would've helped.
And at the very last second, we come up and we throw that in.
That would've helped.
And then
Thanks,
the
Joe.
board goes with it.
Well,
Yeah, that
let
would've
let me clarify something. Even with the current policy, they would have had to have donated that right-of-way because the right-of-way was required for that project. It was required for that project, so they would have been required to donate the right-of-way in that case. We would not, I just want to make sure you understand, the current policy, they would have had to give the right-of-way.
Yeah, I'm talking about the policy change we're working on.
Even,
Right.
even the policy change, they would have had to give in
I
that
still don't
right-of-way.
think we
Because
should
it was
take
in, it
people's
was in
right-of-way.
relation to that project. I just want to make sure. there's
I
no
know, but if it
confusion.
would've came through there, I would've been against
So,
the right of way.
On a work session coming to you soon, so do we need to include the replacement of those funds in that?
I think we need to discuss that.
Can
We
we,
also need to discuss.
would we be able to put that back in there with any carryover Lauren's gonna have? Are you gonna have any carryover
I'm sorry.
from anything you got out there, any line item?
We've got money. You tell me where to pull it from and we can replace that.
You tell us where to pull it from.
I would have to look into it. I would have to know. I know we have money. We're talking.
Then we
$1,000.
need, at the end of the
Yeah,
year,
the tire was a
on your
multi-million-dollar
carryover, when you bring in your carryover at the end of the year, we need to.
It would require a budget amendment.
Yeah, we need a
Right,
budget
when we
amendment
do
to
a
have
Because
that.
you're
But-
transferring between funds. You
Right.
can't do that without a budget.
Exactly.
So we-
That's
That's what I mean, we'll do it at the
Yes.
end of the year.
You
The
can-
board
you
has
can-
to vote on a budget.
You can do a budget
You'll
amendment.
have to, it requires a
Right.
public
Before
Well, I think we
hearing.
definitely should do that.
Well, I think it would satisfy your people.
That's fair.
Okay, we need to move on. Solid waste. Anybody here from solid waste?
Tammy could not be here today. She asked if I would cover this for her, and I told her I would do my best. The municipal solid waste rates for disposal for 2020, they're requesting a $2 increase per ton. This does not include the construction demolition debris. That would stay the same as what it currently is. As per the contract with HAMS, their rate increases annually. 2 years ago, we identified that this rate would slowly go up until we got it to even with the demolition debris rate, so there would just be one rate for disposal out there. She's asking for $2. It was presented to the Solid Waste Committee as well.
The solid waste committee voted to approve this also, or?
I don't believe it would be for them to vote on. It would just be
Okay.
a kind of a notification. The board here sets that rate. This rate increase was included as part of their budget, so.
Has there been a solid waste committee meeting lately?
Yes, there was one, it's been in the last 45 days. I think there was in October, there was.
Did we get the minutes from them? I don't remember seeing any minutes from it, or did we?
We did,
Okay.
yeah. I remember
All right.
that.
And just to be clear, we're not making any money on this. It's just a pass-through fee,
No, this is
right?
just to cover our expenses.
Yeah, so,
Mostly so we lose less.
yeah.
The municipal solid, or the transfer station is not subsidized greatly by a tax rate, but it is subsidized some by a tax rate. And that's one of the things we're trying to work away from.
But the subsidies help offset the free tire days and the.
Those will be the only
free
things-
dumping
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
that's
you
what
are
we're trying
getting
to-
something for your subsidy if you
Yeah.
choose to use it.
The house, the annual cleanup, the tire disposal, brush.
And I
that
would
kind of-
encourage all of our residents
Yes,
to
household tire
use
supplies.
these tire days and the free dumping.
The household hazardous waste one is a. is a
Just
big
don't
one.
throw them on the roadside. Like I said, we offer this, and especially the tires, that's a
That's
very
huge, yeah.
good deal.
It is.
Yes, Councilman.
Chairman, I'd like to make a comment on your solid waste program. And Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Culbertson been involved in county government long enough. I used to spend a significant portion of my time writing letters to individuals whose trash evidently had been stolen and deposited in county roadways. We also had property owners who would regularly find washers, dryers, refrigerators, other large items, piles of tires, dozens of tires dumped on their property. Since the county started its solid waste program, the incident rate of that occurring has
You know
really
what?
significantly
Now that you
fallen.
bring that up, you hardly ever see that, and you used to see it all
And
the time.
It has really relieved what was a true burden on certain property owners in this county.
Dead end
I'll also
roads.
share with you the household hazardous waste program that Mark referenced. People don't have to work, if you've got paint, if you've got thinner, if you've got various chemicals, take them to the transfer station. They will properly dispose of it. It works a great benefit to the public above and beyond simply being able to take trash there for disposal.
I have spent many hours cleaning up roadsides, stuff like that.
And it's
The
never
worst
gone.
one, the worst one was somebody dropped a freezer off in the middle of the road.
Full? Was it empty?
It was full in July.
Oh,
And when it went in the dump truck, it opened. I thought it was the Freon gas coming out of it, but it wasn't.
And you don't see that much anymore, like you used to.
I see that every day in my mind.
Now,
No.
today? Oh, no.
It was a bad deal. But anyway, no, it is, and like I said, we have our transfer station, so it's very easy to use, and I encourage everyone to use it, take advantage of it. So, with that being said, does anybody have any questions on the rate increase? I mean, it's
Pretty straightforward.
yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. We don't need to decide what we're gonna do with all the extra money. So, and I'll entertain a motion to approve the rate increase.
I'll make a motion to authorize the transfer station to increase the MSW rates by $2.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Voting?
Aye.
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 Hey,
All right, thank you. Okay. Public Works, sorry to keep you waiting, Lauren.
That's all right, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I've come before you today to ask for additional expenses for the Olson Master Agreement for Professional Services. When this was originally brought to you, when the Public Works Director left 4 months ago, a cap was put on that contract for $100,000. As of earlier this month, we had reached about $84,000. So I've come to you to ask for additional funds to finish out through December at an amount not to exceed $35,000. While they have been here, Olson has been critical
Invaluable.
to, yes, critical to my ability to conduct this with just myself in this office. So they have conducted project management with me, engineering mentorship, and many other services. So, yes, we approve that.
So Lauren, maybe this is more of a question for Mark, but I think the idea at the time when we set that budget was we were forecasting what our, benefits and salary and expense would be to that position. And that was to quote unquote finish out the rest of the salaried year that we were budgeted for. And I think we've since realized there's tremendous value above and beyond, and would like to keep some type of a relationship even when that Public Works Director position is filled. I guess the question is, are we using them more than we thought we would? Or, because the net impact is, we're getting a savings right now by not paying a Public Works Director. We're offsetting, obviously, any savings by spending more with Olson. But the net impact is probably different than what's being presented here. Because I think was it a 1-to-1? Am I recalling that correctly, when we kind of came up with that cap and number?
I think we came up with that number because that's what we felt would be available budgetarily at the time. And we thought it was a good number. I think I originally had forecast it was going to be around 150,000, but we set it for 100,000 to see where we came out. It's going to end up to be around 130,000 more than likely by the end of the year. Are we using them more than we anticipated? I think we probably are.
Yes.
Because we are having them help us with a lot of policies and stuff like that as well. So they have at any given time, probably 2 or 3 staff members working on projects for the county.
Right.
And I think we've identified in the past, and on one project alone, they've saved the county $500,000. So I think it's money well spent. This is just to get to the end of the year because we can't technically authorize expenditures from next year's budget until that budget comes up. And then also, I don't want to obligate too much and then find out that we get a new public works director on and they feel like they don't need as much of those services or whatever. So this is just to get us to the end of the year.
Are we getting caught up where we need to be on these projects, or are we still lacking?
Yes, we had projects, I would not say that any of them were behind, but I would say that some of them had come up slightly missing. We've tracked down all of our projects that we had open with the juggling of things down in my department. Some things had fallen behind a little bit, and we are feeling very good and very comfortable at where we are at on all of these projects now, and all of them are moving forward. That's why you have seen me up here as frequently as you had in the last few months, is that we finally feel like we are getting things back on track, moving in the right direction, and many of the projects that they have been working on are actually nearing design completion, and we'll be moving into construction on several of those next year.
Where are we at on Eisenhower?
Eisenhower, we are currently on hold for a few different things. We're working on utility relocations. So we've got a few finalized design issues with Leavenworth Water. We're waiting for the agreement for Rural Water 8 to be signed so we can contract Olson to do that, which I will bring that RBA before you once I know that that agreement has been reached.
Can we have that by the first Thursday of December?
Absolutely, you can.
Okay.
Lauren, just to remind me, if we're tracking to have expenditures of $130,000 or so with Olson this year, am I correct in that they saved us about $500,000 in expenses on the Eisenhower project when you think about a return on investment?
Correct, yes. It would have been a utility relocation that they identified a severe cost savings on.
Makes it a little easier to approve.
Yeah.
Yep, it does.
And where are we at on 178th Street south of Evans?
178th Street south of Evans, I have reached out to the engineer on record for that one, and we are working towards getting that in order.
Okay. Will any of these projects be able to be bid by the end of the year, you think?
By the end of the year, I don't believe so. Well,
Okay.
yes and no. We are hopeful that E58, the RFP for E58 for construction, will go out prior to the end of the year, and others we are expecting early next year.
Okay.
We still have the dust abatement to wrap up as well.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. When that's awarded, how quickly can that work actually begin?
For E58?
Uh-huh.
It is something that, as I've said before, it's a bit of an unusual process. I'm not exactly sure what that process looks like quite yet. I'm just not as detailed knowledge as I would like to be. But they are going to come in at a preliminary design stage and help finalize the design. The contractor, whoever is awarded, will help finalize that design phase, and I would assume they will be mobilizing demolition while the design is completed.
As a part of that RFP, I think we had talked about this, are we going to do kind of a, when I say good, better, best, what I mean is, you can generally have an accelerated timeline. You can't accelerate everything, but they can put more resources on a project, which means maybe instead of 6 months, it takes 5 or 4, but costs more, right? So we'll be looking at different construction schedules for the different potential bidders, do we know?
Yes, I think they certainly know that they will certainly know when we put this out that the time frame in which we are looking to do this is a very accelerated process. And they will be working with us, as I said, to finalize the project, to build the schedule and to understand what we need to do and how we need to do it to get it done in the time frame that we've forecasted.
So are you saying we need to put some more people on Eisenhower?
Well, I mean, I think anytime we're doing a bid and we have projects that we believe to be time sensitive, I'd like to see what all of those options and alternatives are. I mean, I've seen lots of contracts in other cities where there's accelerants, right? So every week you get the project done quicker, there's a benefit to you doing so. But they can put together a 4-month, 5-month, 6-month, and if you want the 10-month version, it's far less costly.
Right, but I understand, but, we've done completed 147th, we've completed McIntyre. Eisenhower was on that list that the
Sure.
voters approved to construct with sales tax money.
I agree.
2 out of 3's done, and
Yeah.
Eisenhower just keeps dragging on. I just
Think-
didn't know what we needed to do to get that thing
I'd
on.
want to look at those schedules as well. The only difference I'd make between the two, and I agree 100%, is one's broken completely.
Mhm.
The other's,
Right.
I think it's also noteworthy to say that we've run into more hiccups on Eisenhower than we initially
Oh,
anticipated
I
with
understand. I've been
with
here
roundabouts
for every one of them.
and some utility
Whoa,
relocations and
whoa,
things. I
don't.
know. But, so I
But at the same
think there
time,
is.
like you said, I mean,
yeah, that's
the
fair.
voters passed it, 2 of the projects are done, the other one's not really started.
Mhm.
Oh, it is.
I mean, it's it's.
Lauren, you're doing an
construction.
It is moving
job.
along, I promise you
And that's
that.
and like I said, I'm sure the whole board agrees. I don't want to speak for everybody. I think Eisenhower is a pretty important road. I mean, we've got a significant investment out there
Yes.
along with the city of Leavenworth and our
Yes, we do,
industrial
and it
park.
needs to get,
Agreed to get
so
it
do we
done.
on the agenda.
And then if you guys could hurry up and get your bridge done.
Yeah.
But
At
anyways,
least tear the old one down. Just go ahead and
okay, is
tear
there
it
any questions on the increase for Olson?
No.
Then I'll entertain a motion.
Let's see, where's her thing? Gotta find it. Okay, motion to approve additional expense on Olson Master Agreement for professional services not to exceed
35.
$35,000.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the increase of the extension of Olson's contract? None? Bodie?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Lauren.
Have a good day.
All right, we are ready for LCDC. Come on down.
I got
Yes, and on the
coffee in a
price is
coffee
right.
mug this past Friday night, did you?
What's that? Oh.
Morning.
I left the coffee back there by the coffee machine.
Oh.
Oh, that's a pretty thick book there.
Yes.
And this is not me sucking up to you, but I have high admiration for each of you sitting where you are and dealing with the issues that the citizens bring before you each time you meet.
Issue.
But I thought I was going to lose about $3,500 just a minute ago.
Did your heart start
Yeah,
pounding?
Yeah, I know, it's still early in the morning.
Careful, Steve, careful.
Thank you,
Carry
Mr.
over.
Chairman, and members of the commission. I didn't put a PowerPoint together, but I did put a lot of bullet points together. We've been real busy, focused a lot on marketing, which is kind of our core business, and so I thought I'd just give you a quarterly review of some of the marketing initiatives, which I think you'll sense that we are involved in a lot of different activities. Some travel out of the state, sometimes, a lot of times in Kansas City. Some of it's print ads, and some of it's just one-on-one with realtors and businesses. But since we last met in September, Paul Byers, who is the realtor on from Keller Williams on the Unilock project, called, and we get a few of these, not a lot, but a few of them, and he wanted some advice on some small retail property in Tonganoxie that he was considering representing. And so we met in a strip shopping area on 2440 to talk about that. And then when I get somebody in town, well, obviously he was familiar with the Tonganoxie Business Park because he brought Unilock to that business park, but he hadn't seen it recently, and so we toured that and then also showed him Urban Hess Park. 3 days later, as you know, I think most of you were involved in the visit of Kansas Secretary of Commerce David Toland. He was here. I thought we'd get him, as I mentioned, for a couple of hours, and we got him from 9 to 5. We hosted David for the day. He met with community leaders in Tonganoxie at breakfast. Then we took him over to Baser and met with the mayor and city administrator. We were in Lansing for our LCDC board meeting, and Leavenworth, he addressed our LCDC board. He wanted to tour the Lansing Correctional Facility because he thinks there are some opportunities down the road when the new one is completely built and they move out of the facility they're currently in for film. And that's a part of the Kansas Department of Commerce's arena. So he had been recommended by actually Roger Werholtz, the former Secretary of Corrections, to take a look at that. And I believe that they were going to allow some indoor photography to, even at this stage, which is highly rare, but the warden said that she would allow that for this purpose so they can prepare down the road. We also had a great tour of Fort Leavenworth, and then we took them to our business parks. The Society of Industrial and Office Realtors, SIOR, has an annual event at the end of September, and so on the 26th I attended the event at Union Station in Kansas City, and that's an event where the realtors have their own booths. And so we can go, they're kind of a captive audience since they're in their booths, and it is in the Grand Hall of Union Station. When there aren't booths or people in it, looks pretty big, but during SIOR it is jam-packed, and oftentimes it takes 5 or 10 minutes just to get across the room because it's really elbow to elbow. And in just a moment, I'm going to talk about our Tonganoxie Business Park run, but in Harlan, in just a minute, we'll hand out one of the things that I was handing out at SIOR. So we handed out a promotional piece on our Tonganoxie Business Park open house event to those folks. KCADC has a premier event where they bring in site consultants. The first 4 years they did it, which was about 6 years ago when they started it, they'll bring in 8 to 12 really top-notch site consultants that are hired by businesses, large firms around the country, and make decisions and influence decisions about where businesses locate. They had, for the first 4 years, had a barbecue crawl. Last year it was a Chiefs game, and then this year there was a concert at Kaufman, and they were able to bring in 8 national consultants, and LCDC was one of several local co-sponsors of the event. I like this event. It's one of my favorites because I get a day and a half in a bus with these people. So sometimes an hour lunch or a 2-hour dinner, you've got to exchange business cards and follow up later, but by the end of the day and a half, you have a pretty good feel. And so we did some follow-up, of course, to that event in October. Dustin Baker is now with a development company out of Lawrence, Alcove Development, and we met on October 9th because Alcove had bought the most of the 30 acres that First State Bank owns in Baser, the Wolf Creek mixed-use park across from the industrial area. And so we went through traffic data, demographic information about the community, and Alcove has joined LCDC. And then the very next day, I received a phone call from a realtor representing a restaurant, and that was just the next day, October 10th, and they were specifically looking at Baser and specifically interested in Wolf Creek. And I said, well, the timing is great because we've now got a new contact, and so we've put them in touch with Dustin, and I have called into Dustin to find out what the results of that have been. Problem is, they just bought it, and they are developing their own site plan, and this restaurant's looking for in-cap space that doesn't currently exist, so I don't know about the timing, but we did make that connection. Then on October 17th, I traveled with Secretary Toland to meet with CBRE representatives in Chicago, And then we had a luncheon with a dozen other consultants. We followed up with emails and LinkedIn and sent them links to our website and our industrial parks. And just to give you a sense of what those trips are like, we have a team. It's headed up by the Secretary of Commerce, in this case, Toland. Also Jose Romano, that represents the state in New York, and right now is picking up Chicago and New York, so East Coast as well as some of the Midwest. And then there will be communities. So I'm representing Leavenworth County. Carrie Folletti came from Winfield. John Engelman represents Evergy and the new utility in the area, or newly branded utility. Kent Heerman from Emporia, my counterpart in Emporia, and my counterpart, well, actually Tim Holverson in Overland Park came for Beth Johnson to that trip. When the secretary was in the last half hour of his day here, he was standing, we had him, Paul Kramer and Taylor Tedder and I, showing him the business park in Leavenworth, and he had commented that because there are a lot of different kinds of businesses that potentially might locate there, and he had just hired, or was getting ready to hire, Trent Armbrust, who used to be my counterpart at the Manhattan Chamber in Manhattan. And he is the new director of strategy, bioscience, and technology. After KBA, the Bioscience Authority, went away, they really didn't have a single person at the state of Kansas who worked for the executive branch who, as Secretary Toland said, got up every day thinking about technology and bioscience. And so that's what Trent is going to do. It's hard to take a several $100 million bioscience authority and replace them with a single person, but at least it is a start. So what he said to us is, I want Trent in his first 2 weeks with Commerce to come visit Leavenworth County, and so I used that as an entree to tell Trent, your boss wants you to see our county here, and we just barely missed the 2 weeks, but in his third week he did come. He had some real good ideas about labor skill sets and measuring those on a regular basis of the folks coming out of the fort here. They do that at Fort Riley. Of course, they have a larger flow of people, but the flow of people retiring from Fort Leavenworth has a skill set that is in a different league than most. And then when we were there, we met with Keith Baird, who is the new president of Biomedical Devices of Kansas, and then we also toured the Tonganoxie Park. And I should just say, at this point, what they have done, what Bill Graveman and his wife, Kathy, and then Keith, the new president, have done is started to build more clean room in that 30,000 square foot building. The back of it is an industrial building. You wouldn't know it from the front, but the front of it is 2 levels, and he continues to build north in that building and has probably 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square feet that are lab space, offices, and clean room. And he has, because of that, partnered with Excite Pharma from Kansas City and moved them out of Kansas City, Missouri, and into his building, and or will be soon. I'm not sure that they're actually there, but he did take us through the areas that were designed by Excite Pharma, and so Excite Pharma will lease space. And it's his concept to continue to do that and to provide a synergy, as it were, for different kinds of bio companies in Tonganoxie. So that's very exciting for us, because we hear a lot about the bioscience, certainly the animal health corridor from Manhattan to Columbia, St. Joe, centered in Kansas City, but we don't have a lot of companies doing that. We have just a handful, and they're one of the key ones. Then on November 1st, the Tonganoxie Business Park Poker Run, we co-sponsored the event along with Harlan's company, GBA, Candid, our marketing company, Mutual Savings, and First Aid Bank. as well as the city of Tonganoxie. I believe the city put in $5,000, the city council, for that event. We invited Kansas City area realtors, brokers, builders, other stakeholders, folks that might want to build a building in the Tonganoxie Park to showcase the park. And then following up right now with those who came, and we have a conference call with Candid to talk about that follow-up this afternoon. And we continue to market the park, and we'll follow up with some of the people that did not attend that we invited. We've got a list of about 200 key realtors in Kansas City, and so after the first of the year, we're going to focus on them. And then, if you would, Harlan, thank you. And in this KC Options magazine, unrelated exactly to the magazine, but on page 40, you'll find one of the things that I passed out on our park poker run. We have 5 lots left in Tonganoxie, 2, 10, 12, 30, just over 30, and 38, just under 38 acres. And so we had ATVs and UTVs that the folks that attended were able to get a card, and then whoever held the best hands at the end of the event got to pick a prize. And so anyway, so this is our promotional piece promoting the event and put together by Candid. Candid also put together this 2/3 page ad in KC Options. This is a publication done by Anthem Publishing. We have been in the publication for, I think, the year before I came, so maybe 2 years, so 13 or 14 years we have had an ad in this. We don't have a lot of opportunities for quality of life. This is one of them, but we want to make sure that we're also promoting the industrial park, so we're kind of hedging our bets, splitting the difference. And so this is what I think is a really nice placement next to the cost of living comparison with other metropolitan areas, Austin, Boston, Chicago, Denver, San Francisco, and then the median in the United States compared to Kansas City. So it's a page that people who get this, and the Kansas City Area Development Council will promote this throughout the year. So it's not a magazine that has a shelf life of a month. It literally has a shelf life of a year and is used throughout the year to let people know about the different kinds of life that you can have, work life, and the quality of life means different things to different people. And in the Kansas City metro area, we believe that we provide a unique option here in Leavenworth County. So that shows you a little bit of some of our product from Candid in this, and then the print ad. We don't do a lot of print ads. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's just funny. I was looking at all the comparisons, and the one that really jumps out as far as how how poor we're performing in Kansas City is on the utility side. And we just came from a conference last week and found out that literally 60% of the energy that's generated in Kansas is renewable energy. And so it's like, it's bad math.
Yes. Yes.
True.
I would say this.
Not over time, but initially.
Yeah.
Correct.
I would say this, and we love the guys at Westar, and they're some of our best friends and some quality people and stuff, but they have a different philosophy than KCP&L. KCP&L have managers of economic development that, first of all, fund our building and sites database. So the building and sites database, if you go to LCDC, we'll have all our buildings in the county that we're aware of, large and small, and that's funded from grants from the Kansas City area, or from KCP&L, now Evergy. In addition, we're able to go to them if we want to travel to Chicago. And I didn't do it for that, but I did do it for an event in Atlanta next year, and ask them to pick up or share the cost of that marketing visit. And so that's not something that Westar made available to us or to anybody, but Evergy does, and so we're excited.
Their merger's likely not going to be 1 + 1 = 2, so let's hope the people that you like and culture you prefer prevails.
Yes, oh, yes, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There were a lot of promises made,
Yeah.
but,
okay.
yeah, I understand.
We just spent more than
We
our
did do another luncheon in Boston. We met with an organization in addition to the lunch called Mass Challenge. They're an entrepreneurial initiative of Boston, state of Massachusetts, and private sector partners. And so that was a trip that we again went with Overland Park, Greg Kendall from Kansas City, Kansas, Linda Jolly from El Dorado, Ann Smith Tate from City of Shawnee, and then Jack Alston from Pottawatomie County. So we were well represented. The secretary did not come, but Jose did lead that. And I think that there are some things that we can do. I know Lisa is working with some small businesses, but in terms of entrepreneurship that we could probably do, particularly at the state level, better than we are right now. Because they're giving away, this organization's giving away $1 million to 10 different companies, so around $100,000 to these IT startups every single year, and they get corporate sponsorship. They have a big wall of all the corporate sponsors, and they're big names, and one of them is Kansas City's own Cerner. So Cerner's giving them a lot of money to do entrepreneurship in Boston, and so and I'm glad that Trent Armbrust actually was on that trip, and so that's an idea that he's taking back to the secretary. We had our KCADC annual meeting. We participated in that. We hosted Chang Lu, who is an international trade rep who now does more business recruitment for the Kansas Department of Commerce, and we had representatives from cities of Basehor, Tonganoxie, and Leavenworth. LCDC annual VIP event was Friday. Thank you, those who came. I think Commissioner KAAZ was there. We had 100 RSVPs. We had 85, 86 folks that showed up. The year before, we had it at Grinders, and guess what? We couldn't have it at Grinders this year, so we moved it back to Basehor and had actually better attendance. What I'm excited about, it's an event that's meant to thank the members and investors and stakeholders. And we funded through earnings on the golf tournament. So that's good. It used to be a cost, and now it's just a part of what we earn, about half of what we earn at the golf tournament. But it excites me when John Engelman from Evergy, Tim Cowden, who's the president and CEO of KCADC, attend. John Handley is a commercial realtor who is now representing some property out on Eisenhower. When we could get some folks from outside the county to also attend with our members, then that's really exciting to me. And we did at this event. We sent out an e-blast, a flyer on November 15th to our list of 200 commercial and industrial realtors in the Kansas City area, highlighting a large parcel or a group of parcels adjacent to Basehor. And we have sent out some prior to on Abels Field, Leavenworth Business and Technology Park, and the Tonganoxie Park, as well as properties in Lansing. Metro Wire newsletter is a monthly, or maybe it's bi-weekly publication. I think we're in it at least once a month, and we're continuing to market countywide opportunities through that really well-read online publication. I did sign up for an event in March of next year, Site Selectors Guild. This is a organization of site consultants that you have to be invited into the organization, so it's upper crust site selectors. I've never been. This will be my first time attending. It's easy to get in and out of Atlanta, and then but it's pretty costly. but we're getting Evergy to pick up half of the registration and half of the travel. And so there's an example of a partnership that we're now going to be pretty aggressive in pursuing marketing opportunities with Evergy. They're not as excited about ongoing things that we do every single year, but an event like this, if we convince them, I know it's expensive, but here's what we think our return's going to be, and we'll write you up a little report back, then they'll pick up 50, sometimes 100% of the cost. And then Team Kansas is an offshoot of the Kansas Department of Commerce, and so we're signing up for 3 marketing events organized by Commerce during the next year. Just wanted to mention a few points on leadership. We did, and I know I talked to several of you commissioners about our involvement in the Leavenworth County Comprehensive Plan. I think I was out of town. It might have been on one of these trips to Chicago. And Lisa went to, I think, the first one of the technical committee. And then we both were at the more recent one. And so we've tried to weigh in a little bit on the comprehensive plan that way. I attended the Kansas Economic Policy Conference at KU on the 24th. David Tolan, Tim Cowden, Senator Lynn from Johnson County, who's the chair of the Commerce Committee, were on panel. And it was interesting. I've gone in the past, and then I've skipped a few in the past because if we think it has some relevance to what we're doing a little more specifically. It's just a half a day, and this was a good discussion of the state's efforts in economic development. I'm a part of an organization that's been on the board for 5 or 6 years of KEDA, which is the Kansas Economic Development Alliance. And so we both attended, Lisa and I, the KEDA Fall Conference. And this is a conference of about 150 of our peers and stakeholders in economic world in the state of Kansas. And I was elected president for the coming year, or actually a couple years, which we hope gives Leavenworth County even more visibility with decision makers in Topeka and throughout the state. And so we want that high profile in helping craft state initiatives related to economic development.
And I'll just interject that when we at the executive committee talked about that with Steve and felt like it was a really good opportunity to get him out there so he could represent Leavenworth County. So we encouraged him to seek that seat, and then we're fortunate that he was elected president. So
we have our first, I've got my first meeting to chair in a few weeks to discuss legislative day, and on January 28th we get typically the governor to come say a few words, folks from different state agencies, transportation initiatives, and then at the end of the day, legislators, we host a legislative reception, and so that's just a one-day. So those are the two main things that we do all year. And then we actually utilize KEDA membership funds. It's like $300 a year for the 150 members to pay, I think it's maybe $9,000 a year now, Evergy for the right to use Location 1 within all our communities. And so there is a partnership there. I'm also on the Team Kansas board, which is a group of private sector along with Department of Commerce folks, and we're developing the marketing list of communities and site consultants targets for 2020. So we do that each year, and we've been encouraging them along with others, them being the Department of Commerce, to fill positions that currently were not filled. And these are our salespeople, the state salespeople, for example, in Chicago, in New York, in LA. A year ago, none of them were filled. They just, as people were leaving, they didn't fill the positions. So now we have New York Chicago, I think they've made an offer, and California made an offer too, so those will be all filled soon. Lisa attended a year ago the basic economic development course in Kansas City, which is a week-long course in economic development, and then you have the
OUEDI.
yeah, University of Oklahoma Economic Development Institute in
Denver, Colorado.
Denver. So, and then there's 2 more years of that before you get your certificate. And so we have had discussions about what would be the most effective and what would be the most cost-efficient way. You can do some of the classwork online, and some of it you just can't get online because it's better to be with classmates and network and all, but we're sort of weighing in what year 2 and year 3 of that'll be. Workforce development, real quickly, Classroom to Career took place October 15th. Mary Mack does a great job in that, and that's, I think, about our 20th time. The last 10 years we've been doing this twice a year, once in each semester. We had students from Tonganoxie, Basehor Linwood, and Lansing High Schools toured Central Bag. And then what's, I think, different about it, it's not just a tour, but you do meet with folks not just operating the machinery, but you meet with the plant manager, you meet with HR, accounting, engineering, to find out, if I went to work for a company like this, what are the different kinds of opportunities and career paths in a company like Central Bag. Kansas Industrial Training and Retraining Programs, Lisa's provided grants, and I think you were wrapping up those grants.
Yes, they're for the rest of the year, yes, all of them.
For those Young Sign Company, Geiger Ready Mix, and Zephyr. Military Spouse Economic Empowerment Zone, that's something that I know less about than Lisa does, but there is also the Soldier for Life Transition Assistance Program, and Lisa's background with the military and understanding of military spouses and the folks coming out has been a great opportunity.
So we're working together. The MZs is how we've shortened that, and I, with Ashley Lundy, we're working together to put together a distribution list of all employers that would consider hiring military spouses. And we're just trying to find out some of those barriers, such as the short time that they're here and how they can work with employers to overcome that barrier.
And we also impact the workforce development arena by serving on the Workforce Development Board for Local Area 3. That's Leavenworth, Wyandotte, and Johnson counties, and we've got a meeting tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. They're about seven, yeah.
I was just going to add real quick, and it's less, I guess, about economic development, but on the last day of the conference down in Wichita, we had a speaker, and it was called SaveTheFarm.org. Really great program. It's being spearheaded out of Manhattan, and essentially it's being almost more even the behavioral health space, in that it's trying to find like retired, military personnel and veterans, and they're grooming them to take over farms that the current owners don't want to, either they don't have children to pass them on to, or the children don't want them, but they don't want to see big farms or corporations buy them. They want to continue that farm into the future. And so a really cool placement program where they bring people in and they teach them all about livestock and harvest. And I mean, you name the amount of things that they cover in this program. It was quite exceptional. But the greatest thing was, you've got somebody that's coming in, a retired vet, maybe on a bunch of different types of medications, or you name it, and how therapeutic the experience really is, and being hands-on in these farms. And it is a 24/7, obviously, job, right? So it's super cool. And there was one other one that was mentioned. I'll be sure to get it to you. I can't recall it off the top of my head, but I don't know, ways to partner when you think about the installation and retirees and number of people we have around here, and obviously farming community as well. Something that
Absolutely.
we could look at. So.
Okay, good. And one of the things with KEDA struggles with is that there's Johnson County metro area, and then west of 81, and how do you balance state incentives, and what are you doing for rural folks, and what are you doing differently? Star bonds, I think the governor just cut the ribbon on a star bond, but it was out in western Kansas, more rural areas, so.
Well, I can share with you I don't think all 105 counties were represented in the meetings we were at last week, but clearly in our legislative session, there was a lot of time spent on make sure there is absolutely no change in valuation to ag, which we all would obviously support. But at the same time, it was shifting most of the conversation to dark store theory and commercial, and that's where the difference is going to be made. So you can just imagine when you go to 105 counties, there are 10 probably that are classified as a little more urban. The other 90 are classified.
Were you
very
in a
ag.
session on Thursday morning on the economics about all the surrounding states are doing better than Kansas? Were you folks there? And Finney County's doing really well, and what was the other, Ford County?
Yeah.
Right, Dodge City.
They're all doing real well, better than we are in this area.
And then I know our time is tight. Business retention expansion in 2019 to date. Lisa's been to 71 existing companies and has a few left for the year. 10 companies have received grants or tax savings, and you can read the list. Our results to date, we're over 1.5 million in tax credits and savings that those companies will receive, $32,000 in grants. That doesn't include the $149,000 grant that we got Holyfield Winery, although Holyfield is something that Lisa spends a lot of time on now because we actually are administering the grant through the USDA on their behalf. And 29 new jobs, 52 existing jobs just in the BRE. And on the last page, this is and we give this monthly at our LCDC meeting, through October. These are some of the projects. I won't go through all of them, but the first couple were requests for 80 acres, and we have an 80-acre business park. So Project Bulldog and then a search by Ryan Companies resulted in us throwing our hats in the ring for that. There was an office project, Project Grayling, a financial services company looking for an area to build, and so we have pitched Leavenworth and Tonganoxie. Victoria was, and this is a tough one, and it's a longer conversation, but food processing, we are right in the middle of food processing lane, but it is difficult because we are a mix of rural and urban, and we've got business parks that are not too far from residential housing. And so when we get a request like that, we turn to the communities, and if the communities, if it says something about a slight odor, even if they're not doing any, it's not a kill plant, but it's just cutting meat, there may be no interest, and in this case, in Project Victoria, even though it was 100 to 300 employees, there was no interest from the communities, and so that's, we kind of take direction from the cities in that manner. First City Center inquiry, we showed the property on October 29th. They were looking for 8,500 square feet for office. They found us online. And then we had the Baser retail inquiry I mentioned about Wolf Creek Mixed Use Park. And everything below that line of asterisks, Franklin West Clean, and then Winter, Local, Summit, Ames, and Marshmallow are still active, but came in before October. The ones above the line are just in the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Mike, what was the name of the energy company, the renewable one that was there? Start with an N.
I have to go.
There was an energy company that, I don't know if it overlapped or maybe it was later in the morning on Thursday that I attended, and they coined a term I thought was useful. It was called cave people, and it's citizens against virtually everything.
Oh, yes.
That exists
I've seen
in places. It's not unique. So that's
I've heard that
they do work all
acronym
across
before.
Kansas, so I thought that was a term that.
Nextera? Was it Nextera, the energy company?
That's who it was, yeah, I started with an N, Nextera, yeah.
Okay.
Question for you on the
Yes, sir.
29 new jobs, is that from January to January, and are those mostly coming out of existing jobs?
Yes,
or-
that was just the result of those projects.
Okay, and it's January to January where you're.
Well, January
Up to
to
this
now.
point.
Yeah.
To November.
Okay, on the one in Tonganoxie, the Excite Pharma,
Oh,
how many jobs is that gonna create, or did that bring in?
yeah, I think so, 15, because Biomedical Devices of Kansas is at 4 or 5 now. They're very high-wage jobs, but it's a small organization.
All right, so
There should
18
be
jobs, but they're
15.
pretty high-wage jobs. That's really good. Any new clients on the horizon for Tonganoxie Business Park?
Just,
Yep.
that's,
Then you think,
that's it.
you think it's looking good?
Well, we'll see. I think we'll get something out of the event that you attended. We had two of the realtors, John Smith from LS Commercial, interested perhaps in building a building and wanted to have further conversations. And then Jeff Gray from LJ Mueller in St. Joe had talked to us about spec building that they built in St. Joe, 50,000 square feet, without a floor, which then allows you to have the shell up, lower cost, and then more flexibility if a company comes in and wants trains over there instead of over there, and wants 2 dock-high doors instead of 3 or 1, so.
So now the LCDC and the Port Authority, you said you attended the comprehensive plan and were involved in that a little bit. I know we visited. Is your group supportive of the County Road 1 rezoning?
Oh, to have development along the,
Corridor.
yeah, the
Right.
corridor.
Yeah, I wouldn't be afraid to say absolutely yes. I mean, it's, from an economic development standpoint, when we look at the investment the county's made in that corridor, and the potential for future growth that we see up and down I-70, I think it would behoove us to support an EDC-type activity like that. So.
And follow-up to that is, can you be involved in the promotion or marketing of that? Because we're trying to get information out about how that does not negatively impact you. It actually could positively impact your property values and that kind of information. Because I think an economic development group that the county is supporting, that's something that would be very helpful to let the folks know, you know. At least let them know what the positive part of that is.
I think there's ways we could certainly help. I think my personal observation have been, not necessarily in this specific case, but a lot of times when people hear about rezonings, they assume that their property is going to immediately be taxed at the new rate, and that's just not typically the case. You know, if you're using an ag use and you get zoned to commercial, until you were to switch your operation to commercial, you would continue to be taxed at an ag rate. So it's not, and I think that's information sometime that we all just need to do a better job of getting that kind of information out to make sure people understand that.
And we're kind of thinking maybe a question and answer or something.
FAQ.
Or, you know.
Yeah.
I think all the letters that went out last week, people's taxes went up anyways, whether you rezoned it or didn't.
Well, that's true.
Lisa, have you reached out to the new flower bar in Basher yet?
Right after the event, after the tornado, I did ask him how things are going, and then I contacted the Department of Commerce and talked with Sala, and we made sure that he had the contact to SBA. But past that, I'm not sure.
Well, I
A small
thought it just
business-
opened up.
Sorry? Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's a new florist that opened up in Basher.
Oh, in Basser?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Free State. I apologize. In
I was
time.
gonna say, wow, I'm really behind, because I just stopped by Sunday, because it just had opened. And when you're talking about a tornado, is there another tornado I missed? Anyways, no, they just opened up.
Okay.
It's called Flower Bar,
Greenhouse,
it's right there across from the Mercantile,
Do you know the name of it?
the Flower Bar.
Flower bar, there you go.
You need a number? 913-909-0819.
Okay.
I missed the grand opening, and I was driving by Sunday, and they were there, and they were working, so I stopped in and visited.
I just kind of wanted to add, We get super excited talking about these things, and I know maybe some of it bores you guys to tears, but that's why we're here, so we can be out there on the front for you guys. We appreciate all the investment that you put in our organization and our other organization, Leavenworth County Port Authority, that Steve's the director of. But we especially appreciate the investors. We have 70-some investors in our organization, and they represent, just in this quarter, hundreds of hours of effort that have been put into helping promote Leavenworth County. It's the people that you see that come to our board meetings, the people that show up when Secretary Tolan was in town. And so we appreciate that support. We just want to continually thank you for that. And I think the other thing we would say is that our door's always open, our phones typically are always answered, and Steve and I, we'd love to go to lunch with anybody that has any questions about what we're doing, what we have done, where we're heading. And again, I think I may have mentioned this last time, but sometime down the road in the next month or two, maybe the beginning of the new year, maybe we could schedule a work session just to talk about LCDC and what we're doing, and get, have another opportunity kind of outside of this environment to hear from you guys as to what your expectations are of the organization, and then answer maybe drive down into detail of some of these things, because we throw a lot of stuff out here. One of the biggest things that I noticed in this report, we're out there. We're not sitting in the office. We're out there representing Leavenworth County. Our staff is out there. I think Steve puts the answering machine on and he just goes, and Mary's there most times, but I think that just speaks a lot to the organization. The other big thing that I wanted to talk a little bit just briefly about is candid marketing. And a couple of years ago, you guys funded some additional money that we put into marketing for the county, and we revamped the LCDC website. And I would challenge you guys to, I know you've all seen our website. I would challenge you now to go out and look at Wyandotte County EDC, Platte County EDC. I'd like you to go look at our competitors' websites and see that we are finally on an even foothold in competition of presenting Leavenworth County professionally. These marketing materials, they're all branded. I don't know if you noticed that. They're using same fonts, same colors, same the star, the yellow star that's on there. This is all done intentionally, and we're driving that in everything we do. Simple things like the header on Steve's reports. We're just driving this home continually. All the marketing materials for Tonganoxie Business Park were structured around Candid's work. Steve mentioned the Metro Wire ads. All those ads go out. They all have a branded look to them. We'd never had that before. So that investment is paying huge dividends. We'd love an opportunity to get in front of you again at some point and talk about how we can take that to the next step. We're always looking farther down the road to make sure we can get ourselves ahead of the competition, and we need you guys to help us do that.
I think I mentioned it before, and I agree. I think it looks great. I think they've done an amazing job. I'd love to see some of the metrics that Candid provides, right? So we talk about number of website visits, impressions.
Yes.
There's call to action now where people can actually ask to be contacted, and I think some of that activity would go a long way to not only just educating us, but there's no comparison to navigation of your guys' site and ours, so maybe I'm just really jealous.
But for the people who do come and look at our parks, what is the problem why they don't want to locate here?
It's competition, Commissioner. I mean, it's a competitive world that we're in. And sometimes, the logistics of the Tonganoxie Park sometimes present better because of its location to I-70. It's the proximity to some residential when we get up to Leavenworth and some of those things. It's our competition, strictly our competition. We see, and I shouldn't take your thunder probably, but we do get a lot of requests for existing buildings. It's why we wanted to follow up a little bit on this idea of building a spec building with no floor in it, because the budget costs look a lot more attractive to a county community like ours, of what maybe we could team together and figure out some funding for that. It's having that building ready to go. I attended, we didn't get it in the report, but I attended Metro Wire Media's Industrial Summit a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that they talked a lot about was a transition in the marketplace, in the industrial marketplace, where we've seen a lot of 750,000 square foot, million square foot warehouses being built. Now we're seeing third-party logistics driving warehouse needs down more locally in a 50,000 to 150,000 square foot need. What that means is the Amazons and Jet.coms and all of those folks of the world, they still need to be able to get that product closer to your door, because at the end of the day, the retail climate's changing. We talked a lot about that in that meeting as well. They've got to have a warehouse in your neighborhood, literally, so that they can get that product to you because you want it in one day when you click buy, and unfortunately, that's where the retail is going. Now, the good thing about that is, in the same respect, we just read a report from Lane 4 about retail, and there is a big resurgence in localized retail and customer service. So they really believe that those two kind of elements of retail can coexist. So we felt like on the industrial side, that was really good news for us, because we think we could get the Leavenworth Park, the Tonganoxie Park positioned in those sizes of warehouses to provide that support. So it's a continuation of following up with logistic folks. We met a few folks at the VIP event that are in third-party logistics, and we want to follow up with them and get a little bit more. Steve and I just talked about it this morning. We just want to get a little bit more information about that so we can see where we fit in that piece of the puzzle. So man, it's an exciting time. It's also just ever-shifting soil in our business, and so it's all about competition.
Where do we fall in skilled labor or just labor for these jobs, this area?
Actually, we're in a little better shape than some. Of course, labor in our market goes across county lines, and so in a way, we benefit from Wyandotte County's slightly above average unemployment. Atchison right now, north of us, has the highest unemployment rate in the state. So that's not necessarily bad for us, because we do have access to folks at the port, the metro area. When you go out to western Kansas, the unemployment rate's not 3 or 3.5% where it is now, but it's 2 or 1.9 or 2.5%. And so they really struggle for workforce there.
I, for one, love the work session idea, so let's work towards that. I think we're getting maybe close to time on some people that came to visit with us. So
Sure.
I want to continue the conversation, because we've had a lot of back and forth about inventory, lack of inventory, how much inventory we have, is it the right kind, are these usable spaces, is it primarily the location? All of these things have come up, and I think having a really good active list of properties that we can market to today, so we're selling something that exists, and then obviously continuing to sell a vision of what could exist with the right type of business or investment or whichever. So, but thank you, very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Which one do you want? Which executive session do you want?
Which first?
Which
You have an
one?
individual who's been waiting approximately an hour, I'd suggest.
Okay.
That works.
So which one is that? Which?
I'd say it's the
Non-elected personnel commissioner.
Okay, I move that this board recess from open session and go into a closed executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel as justified by KSA 75-4319B1, and that this board resume open session in this meeting room at
11:55 is 15 minutes. How long? How much?
12,
12:10
at
interview.
12:10, at 12:10 PM. Present in the executive session will be Commissioners Jeff Culbertson, Vicky KAAZ, Doug Smith, Chad SCHIMKE, and Mike Stieben, County Administrator Mark Lothry, and Senior County Counselor David Van Paris, and others as may be invited by the board.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the executive session? Seeing none, voting?
Aye.
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 For the record, we have returned to regular session. From executive session, no decisions were made. Topic was limited to non-elected personnel.
Okay, I move that this board recess from open session and go into a closed executive session to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel as justified by KSA 75-4319B1, and that this board resume open session in this meeting room at 12:30 PM. Present in the executive session will be Commissioner Jeff Culbertson, Vicky KAAZ, Doug Smith, Chad Schimke, and Mike Stieben, County Administrator Mark Lothry, and others as may be invited by the board.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, voting.
Aye.
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 Let the record show we have returned to regular session from executive session. No decisions were made. The topic was limited to unelected personnel. Are we going to make a motion?
What do we want to do now?
Are we,
So are we waiting for
We're gonna
David,
take
or
a
we gotta
break
make a
now,
motion?
come back at 1:30,
Can we take a break
should we just recess for now?
for till 1:30?
or adjourn till 1:30?
So we are able, when we do come back at 1:30 in a work session, we can, from a work session, go into executive session?
Yes.
Okay.
I just checked, Dave's not here, so can't have to do his.
Right, so can we
Take an
just,
hour.
Motion
an
we
hour?
adjourn for 1 hour till 1:30.
second?
Motion and second, voting.
Aye.
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 Aye.